another episode from Virtualize Everything, where we strive to inform and educate the viewer about technology and technology-related topics. Tonight's video presentation is going to be about remote desktop over SSH. So we can actually use SSH to load a GUI. That's right. I know I never knew that, and I had always thought of SSH as a command line only tool. But that's not the case. Using software called X2Go and X11, we're actually able to use SSH to establish a super high performance remote desktop session. So in this video presentation, I am going to use my Proxmox home lab to set up a short demonstration of how to do this. You may find this process useful for many other projects. This is what it looks like when you have established an X2Go connection to your server using your X2Go client software. Here are the commands that we're going to use today to set up our X2Go server in a Debian distribution. We're going to use a flavor of Debian called Raspberry Desktop to do this today. I have successfully completed this with other operating systems like Ubuntu and Kali in the past. So now we're at our Proxmox web interface. You can see I have a terminal session going here for later use, as well as an X2Go client software already loaded. This just makes it easier for me when I'm filming my videos to be able to have everything at the tip of my fingers. So we're going to start with our Proxmox web interface here, and I'm going to start by making a clone of my Raspberry Desktop OS. To do that, I'm going to right-click, click Clone, and give it a name. I'm choosing Linked Clone today because I only need to add the files that I plan on working with. Linked clones are also easier and faster to create. Alright, here we go with our Raspberry Pi Desktop OS running. Let's start by enabling SSH. Now, this is going to be done differently on different operating systems. Operating systems like Ubuntu Desktop, you're going to have to install it. apt install OpenSSH-server is the command to install SSH on your Ubuntu desktop distribution. This distribution, this flavor of Debian, happens to come pre-installed with SSH, but it is turned off. To turn it on, we're going to go to Properties, Raspberry Pi Configuration, Interfaces, and SSH just needs to be enabled. Click OK. Now we can open a console. Type in IP address and get the IP address to this client. Now we can go to our terminal. Today I'm using Mac, but this process will be very similar if you're using Linux. And Windows, you're going to have to use PuTTY. Check out YouTube for videos on that. Alright, so now that we have an SSH session established, we can actually go ahead and exit this console so it is out of our way. Now, If you'd wish to do this process all inside of your console and not establish an SSH connection, feel free. I'm only establishing an SSH connection today so I can use the copy and paste shortcut keys to enter these commands in an efficient manner without mistakes. So jumping back to our PowerPoint presentation that contains the commands we're using, the first command we need to enter is apt-get update. So alrighty, it looks like we have 57 packages that need to be upgraded. I'll have to remember to do that later, but we don't need to do that at this point. So now let's jump back to our slide and take a look at the next command. apt-get install software properties common. So the command to install this, as you saw below, is apt-get install software properties common. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in from my notes and press enter. Capital Y here. Alrighty, now that that is finished, let's go back over to our slide and we are installing the repository X2Go stable. Let's go ahead and run this. Press enter. And I've got this error message before. It never seems to actually affect the process. So we're just going to continue and move on. If you're doing this repository add on other distributions like Ubuntu, I don't get this error message. So now we need to do another update. If you'd like to scroll through your previously entered SSH commands, you can use your up and down arrows. And just press enter. Okay, and now it looks like it's time to install X2Go Server and X2Go Server X Session. Alrighty, now that we have installed X2Go and X2Go Server X Session, the last step is going to be to install the XFCE4 desktop. This is the desktop that is suggested by X2Go for use with their software. Although their software supports many other desktops, this makes a nice, lightweight desktop for use. Alrighty, now that we have installed the XFCE4 desktop, let's go ahead and do the last step of the X2Go installation, which is to restart our system. We can do that by sudo reboot. And we'll give this a few minutes to come up so we can start configuring our X2Go client at this point. Our host is going to be the IP address of our system, which you saw me bring up from our SSH session. Login for this case, because it's Raspberry Pi desktop, is going to be default, and it's Pi. Now we're going to come down here and load our XFCE that is recommended. As you can see, there are many other options that we have for desktops, as well as this one, single application, which will actually allow you to even run applications from your server on your computer almost as if they were just native. Today we're going to just run our remote desktop session. Now let's take a look. We have connection speeds. We have some input and output options. Copy and paste. Clipboard. Display settings. Sound support. And even some folder sharing settings if we so wish to set this up. As you can see, this is a very powerful tool for remote desktop. So we're just going to click OK, and our server should be up and running at this point. So we can click here. There we go. Now we can enter our password and click OK. And if all goes to plan, we should be able to establish a connection and see our desktop appear here. There is our desktop, all ready to use. All your pre-installed software from the host operating system. So there you go. There's how to set up X2Go on a Proxmox virtualized VM and use it so that you can have a nice high-performance remote desktop session using SSH. If you enjoyed today's video and made it all the way to the end, that's great. I would also like to take a second and thank both the Raspberry Pi forum and the linuxhelp.com website for helping me with the information to make today's video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. As always, have a good night.